Let's talk about it. There's a lot of men who think that they are high valued men, when actually some of the men who think that they are high valued men don't even have anything. But the ones who do have something, they're basing their value off of their assets. And a man who think that way, who diminishes his value based off of what he has, the materialistic things, he's more of an liability than an asset. There's a lot of men who are not pursuing women like they used to in the past because for whatever reason, they think that they are God's gift to the world. Some of these men have daddy wounds and mommy wounds. Some of these men have been molested and have confusion in their sexuality. And they try to put it off on the woman and make it seem like, oh, I don't know if you're God's will for my life. I have to seek the Lord. Or they'll say, they'll take their time, they move like a sloth, or they basically entertain multiple women or whatever. But there's a problem, there's something going on. And it's just really unfortunate because it's a part of the plan of the adversary. All of this causes us not to be able to procreate and do what God has called us to do and to have a purpose mate. You're not fulfilling God's plan for your life when you don't handle your relationships right. I noticed that there's a lot of men who are not really looking to marry because they think that it's more beneficial to the women, or there's really no benefit, especially because they're already getting the benefits. When they don't realize that that is also a part of the plan of the adversary. You have bought into the plan of the adversary. Marriage should not be so much about the legal aspect of it. It should be you joining together as one in holy matrimony before God and making a covenant. That's what marriage should be about. To build family, build community, and ultimately change the world. It should be about purpose. It should be about ministry. It should be life-changing. So a lot of men are not even pursuing women the way they used to because society has done a number. Then you have a lot of rhetoric, such as Kevin Samuels, that is causing men to believe that they are God's gift to this world. Still buying into the rhetoric of Kevin Samuels. And it's unfortunate because, yeah, some of the stuff that Kevin Samuels said was true. It's just, it came from a broken place based off of the delivery. It's one thing if you build a woman up. It's one thing if you try to train and teach or school someone versus tear them down. That's a whole nother thing. And you have to be careful how you treat people. You walking around thinking that you're a high value man so you can treat a woman, that gives you an excuse or a reason to treat women messed up. They are basically capitalizing off of the idea that the ratio of women to one man makes them high value or ideal. When, again, your value shouldn't be based off of the fact that there's a ratio of more women to one man. What about your character? What about your morals? What about your standards? At the end of the day, if you was to lose everything, or God forbid, if you was to get ill, you will want someone that's going to take care of you. You will want someone that's with you for the sake of you and who you are. We should get back to what really matters. And what matters is your moral, the code of ethics. That's what matters. But society has programmed us, and we've been indoctrinated to believe that It's okay to have sex before marriage. It's okay to have the benefits. It's okay to do all these things when how in life are we willing to give our bodies to someone who we don't even know or know whether or not we should marry? If you really think about that, it makes absolutely no sense. I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of doing that. I have at some point. But the point is, it doesn't work. Now, some men might say, well, why are you single? I'm single literally because I choose to be. And that's a part of God's plan for my life right now. And I'm okay with that because I don't want just anything. Now, there's some men that say they don't want to be with a woman who has been married. They don't want to be with a woman who has children already. You are not the kind of man that I want anyway, because I want a man who wants God's will for his life. And a man who wants God's will for his life, he's okay with however God manifests his love story. I want God to get the glory out of my love story. That's why I'm single. So if you're walking in carnality and you are basing your decision for wanting to be with someone based off of those things, then you're not the type of guy that I want anyway. And I'm okay with that. I had to turn down a lot of guys because they were more focused on those things. And at the end of the day, to each his own, Whatever you prefer, that's your business. But just because I have children, 2 children, and just because I've been married before, that's not stopping God's plan for my life just because a man doesn't prefer that, because I have my preferences too. And I'm okay with a guy not wanting that from me or not wanting to be with me, because you just canceled yourself out of a blessing. And whatever God has for you is for you, and whatever God has for me is for me. And I'm okay with that. People like Kevin Samuels, he has spewed out this rhetoric that women who have been married before, or women who has children, or women of a certain age, or Black women, that they will die single. He's spewed out this rhetoric that you shouldn't be with that type of woman, a type of woman like me. But let's face it, I say this in all humility. Does it look like I have an issue with getting a man? No. My issue is not getting a man. It's the kind of man that I desire according to my relationship with God. I'm wanting what God has for me. So that's why I'm single. And I think it's unfortunate because there has been a lot of negative connotations, preconceived notions about women who have children or women who has been married, when that is literally more surface level. Like, a real man is not predicating their decision based off of those things. Those are preferential things, which is okay. Again, to each his own. However, that way of thinking that people should be condemned because of their past, what makes you think that God can't grace someone in that area when you have done things that you shouldn't do? I guarantee you, if I was okay with doing something like a sexual favor for a guy, he would be okay with that. But yet then he'll tell me, oh, I don't want a woman who have kids or who's been married. You have no morals or values, because you don't value yourself enough to make sure that before you allow yourself to engage sexually, that you make sure that this is a person that you would even want to be with. So I wouldn't even want somebody like that. And I'm okay with the waiting process, because men like that, who thinks like that, they're not good men. Just because you think you're a high value man, that doesn't mean that you're a good man. And in fact, men who act like that or think like that are the type of men who even God rejects. This is biblically speaking. And the problem is, a lot of people who claim to be Christians, they don't know their Bible. And these things that I'm saying is also biblical. Anytime, so now I'm talking about the man who is supposed to be a godly man. So-called godly men who reject women based off of the fact that she's been married, and they use the Bible as a weapon and weaponize her and say, oh, I don't want to be with a woman who has been married because look at what it says in the Bible. Then you're like the Pharisees and the Sadducees, because what makes you think that God's grace is not sufficient for someone who has been married before? You can do any and everything. You're okay with engaging sexually and all this stuff, and you just know that God has grace for you. God has grace for anybody, and he has mercy upon whom he chooses to have mercy upon. So according to my faith and according to my relationship with God, I know that he has grace for me. Just like you know he has grace for you when you do something that you're not supposed to do. And it's crazy how people who may do anything under the sun, but then they point out one scripture and say, oh, that's not forgivable. Those are people who are just like the Pharisees, just like the people who told Jesus, oh, you can't heal on the Sabbath, or you can't do a miracle on this day. Who are you to tell Jesus what he can do? Or how about the one who say, call something that God has called clean and call it unclean? Those are examples of how people are operating just like the people that God didn't approve of. God didn't approve of that behavior. Those are the people that he spoke against most. And you have to be careful how you treat people. You have to be careful of how you try to condemn people, or women who have had children, or women who has been married before, because that's not biblical. That's not even biblical. How is it that it's okay for you to do X, Y, Z, and you think that God's judgment is not going to be upon you? God's grace is not sufficient for those who have had done these things? It's not even biblical. And we all have to give an account for how we treat people. We all have to give an account for how we condemn people. And God is going to say, you can't curse what God has blessed. So that's speaking a word curse when you tell somebody, oh, because you've been married, you don't deserve to get married again, or because you have had children that, oh, no man is going to want you. All those things are word curses. And you know what? God specializes in the impossible. God's grace is sufficient. God's grace covers a multitude of sin. So God can do whatever he wants to do. So be careful how you throw swords at someone, because if you live by the sword, you will die by the sword. That's in the Bible. So be careful how you treat people, because what you reap, you will sow. That's all I have to say.